we create them, and then as we peel through those layers that we've created, we can tap into the core. It's kind of interesting because it does really relate to fruits and how they grow in the garden, and vegetables, the seed, and that's the life force, and that for me is the breath. So no matter what work I'm doing, whether it's working at my job, or if it's dancing on stage, or if it's teaching a workshop, I've got to do the work to peel through those onions, and then I just try to be present to that life force, which is my breath. And so I'm working on that every day. That's who I am.
Sweet.
In a nutshell. Your turn.
In a nutshell.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Well, I'm Shophar, and the work that I do is energy body work. So the focus is basically on taking our central and creative energies and having those expand our awareness. So it's using our sensuality, our presence in our body, to actually expand the consciousness to up to whatever we need it to be. If we need a breakthrough in life, in one aspect of our life, whatever, we can actually use our presence in our body to have that. So it's really about balancing our sensual and emotional energies in our bodies, and we'll talk more about that. But that's actually what's happening in the session. It's that the emotional body, what some people may call the aura, and the physical body, the sensual body, we have an exchange of energy with those two bodies. And when we do that, we can have some pretty powerful experiences.
Okay, so I want to make sure I got that. The sensual body and the emotional body, you're saying you're clearing pathways between the two?
Exactly. It's when we have an exchange between the two. So say like, Golden, I really appreciate you having us over here. Now, if that's just a mental concept, if that appreciation hasn't registered somewhere in the body, in the physical body, then it's just a mental concept. Which is good. We want people at least to appreciate us, at least mentally. That's a start. But when we actually start to feel, oh, I love someone, and it register in the physical body, that's when the magic of life happens.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So, before we really dive in, I want to make sure that I say, if you have any questions while we're talking, or if you want any clarification or anything whatsoever, put it in the comments so we can read it and we'll try to answer your questions. Okay,
Did somebody just ask something, or does it say sounds good on your phone, Golden?
She said so good.
Oh,
Yay!
so
Okay, glad. I'm glad that it's landing with you. Okay, so well, perhaps I'll just start with sharing a little bit about how our session was structured, and then we can kind of dive into how you work it with other people that come to you.
I like that.
So when I came to the session, before we started, I really appreciated that you started with a prayer and an invocation.
Right.
And that was really meaningful to me. So the three of us were basically opening the container with pure intent and stating and vibrating what our intention was for the session. So first of all, thank you for doing that and for creating a safe, sacred space. And so then I laid on a table. I was fully clothed, and Shophar let me know that he would be maybe touching me on hands or feet, but being really clear about how he would be working with me and how Kirti would be working with me. And he also made it really clear that before we started that we can release all expectation. So we were really opening up the space for whatever wanted to come through. And I really appreciated that we released expectation, but we also spoke intention. So it felt really truly as if we created this container for what wanted to come through. And then, I was laying there and receptive, and my eyes were closed, so I don't really know what was happening in the room besides what I sensed with you and what I felt. But could you perhaps share what happens next after a person lays on the table for you.
Okay. One thing I'd like to cover on that, just so people know too, is like you said, we started with the prayer, but before the session starts, what I'll do too is there's probably at least an hour or maybe 2 hours that are put into me just making sure that I can be a good conduit for the energy to come through. So it's a lot of intention put forth before the session even starts, before the person even shows up, sage the place and all of that. So, but during your session, what we were doing, you just were tuning in. We did touch like your hands, your feet, your head, your stomach. I think your low back, the back of your knees. We never touched the breast or vagina, any place sexual, inner thighs. And but in your particular session, it was like we just were really tuning into the emotion that were coming through and trying to feel where you were at in your journey, and then breathe into that to help you to actually move that energy, to move those feelings that were showing up and everything. So another way to set is that if the practitioner can feel somewhat, what's going on, then especially when a person is receptive, especially the feminine is in a receptive mode, then you'll feel a lot of what's going on. So. And my thing is in the session is to help you to actually transmute those feelings. So if there's a feeling of sadness or whatever, if there's a feeling of guilt or shame that's showing up in the session, the practitioner is actually helping you to make that into a more loving, a higher vibration. Yeah. And that's when it starts to feel good. That's when you start to feel lighter.
Right. And I felt that, and so I'm curious. Because we did have a little bit of verbal exchange.
Sure. And
sometimes I would share with you when a really uncomfortable sensation or thought or memory was coming up. And I'm wondering what you do in the moment to help someone move that energy through.
So once the mind, which is the gatekeeper, once the mind is kind of told to go play somewhere else, then the body can have its experience. And this is supposed to be the body's experience. And so once the mind is no longer the gatekeeper, we say it and we know it, and we all are one. So I can feel something in my body with intention and, and help you to actually if I let go of it in my body at that point, you'll let go of it in your body. Because the mind is no longer saying, hey, this is her body, this is your. So with that intention, and another thing is intention is actually like the intestines of our emotional body. So what I mean by that is like how on the physical level, we have the small intestines, which grabs all the nutrients, and we have the large intestines, which let's go the sugar, honey, iced tea, all the other shit that ain't serving us. And so the with our intention at that point being set forth to let this go, that's what it'll do. Because the energy is basically at that point, our emotions are at our command.
Yeah.
Most of us don't, we haven't been taught that. But when we let the mind go, it'll do what we tell it to do.
And I think a big part of, like, whenever you're feeling something, like one, if we're present, but then also whatever discomfort that's coming up is embrace it with loving kindness, regardless.
Right.
Like, it's not like, nope, you don't belong here. It's like, okay, you're here, and we love you. We love this emotion that's coming up because it's a part of you, and we love you. And based on the intention that you shared with us, it's like eyes are on that prize. It's like, that's where we're going. So whatever comes in our path is just going to, like, guide us, but we still have the end destination. So as long as, for me, I let him do what he needs to do, but I'm holding the presence of where we need to all go as well. So perhaps it's almost like if we were in the Wizard of Oz, traveling on the yellow brick road. We all have our things, but we have this ultimate goal and this ultimate place that we're going to get to. So if he needs to stop and focus, what his skill and what his, healing work is, then I can hold you in a place with loving kindness while that gets worked out. And I think it helps to have the feminine present.
It
when you're
does.
working
So
with a woman.
Yes.
so that's another thing I'll touch on is like
Swivel it around. Yeah.
so when because I've been doing this energy work now for almost 4 years, and one of the recent things that I've decided to do is, like, whether working with a couple or working with a single woman, is to have another woman present. That's just a recent thing. Like, I've been doing it all the time by myself, and there's been a lot of very powerful sessions that's come from that. But then there's those that I feel like there's not a connection made, because still, even though they're in this vulnerable state, they're on the table or whatever, or is on Skype or whatever, but they still maybe don't feel comfortable enough to.
Right.
So I feel like the feminine there, Kirti helping me, or my mom, or I have 4 younger sisters, got some nieces that eventually maybe will take in on it. Or then there's other women who've had energy work done with them, and they're interested in learning how to do this.
Right.
So always having a feminine there with me now, I feel like that's a turning point.
Mm-hmm.
I can say that knowing just who I am and the trauma that I have around men as well,
Right.
that I know I was able to go really, really deep because Kirti was there. Not saying anything about you, because
It is what it is.
even if Shophar is like a saint, right? My own trauma.
Which, by the way, saint has the word ain't in it, so, you know.
I'm just using it like
no,
an
I'm just
example.
saying. No, but you take off the S and it's an ain't, so.
Having Kirti there as well, I think helped me have this sense of it's okay. It's okay, because I didn't really know you, and I'm trusting you to go. Like, when I do the healing work, I want to go as deep as possible, and I don't want to hold back. And so I think that it helped me also to know that Kirti, you were there as well and holding the space, especially also because if there's sexual energy coming through as well, that I think that could be uncomfortable for some women who are just in a room.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the biggest
big
elephant in the room for this kind of work is the sexual energy and how women feel about expressing that, and kind of what doors this opens up for that.
Right.
Yeah.
I know you said one of the questions that people were asking, so what's the range of things that happen in the session? So, and going with that, and going with the sensual energy and everything, so there may be sessions where it's very meditative or very, an emotional thing, but it's not necessarily sensual or sexual. And then there have been sessions that is very sexual, it's orgasmic even. I mean, to the point where the orgasm, the wave of orgasm is held for hours. The typical session goes for about 3 hours. There's been even
so beautiful.
There's even been sessions when and it's like wave after wave after wave after wave, and you just, at that point, once that arc is hit, you can just kind of, as the practitioner, you can just let the person have their experience.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're
like cheesing right now. Yeah, it's great. It really is.
Sometimes in the sessions, they can even, I have people ask this, because they see on the website that I say bring a change of clothes. There can be ejaculation without any physical manipulation. It's all about how deep the person goes and really what your individual spirit needs. It may just need a meditative, just inward. I've had people like, it's just this deep inward thing or whatever. They show no signs of anything happening. They get up totally refreshed, and that's exactly what it needed to be. So in our prayer in the beginning is like, we asked that the session be nothing more or less than what it needs to be.
Yeah. And for me, I had an experience of, one was, God, there was so much, and there's so much information I felt was being revealed to me, so many sensations. A lot of them were overlapping, so it was interesting to have a visionary experience where there were many, many visions coming through. There were messages that were being transmitted from within myself to me. I was experiencing bliss and sexual energy, and I was experiencing trauma release, and I was experiencing having memories come up, sexual memories. I had memories of other lifetimes. I had memories of, at one point I was feeling like somebody was choking me to death.
Wow. Oh yeah, I remember that.
So it was interesting. It was like having an entheogenic type of an experience, a visionary experience, like people would have with plant medicine. But it was just with breath and presence. And I know that it wasn't just me hallucinating. I know that what was coming through me was legitimate and authentic and real. And it was very striking to me that I could be having a memory of sexual trauma while sort of almost like blissful energy was coming through too. And so it was really interesting to observe the layers and the nuance. And so I'm curious about that.
So that's what I was talking about, that transmutation. So when I first was exposed to this energy work, I know another thing was my history. So I'll go a little bit into that, and that'll also tie into what you just said. 2002 is when I met the first of 3 masters that I studied with, Yao, Master Yao. And he put me on the Qigong, the Tree of Life, Tantra, And that's when I really started my journey right there. Then in 2007, I guess I was a good student, so he introduced me to the second master, a gentleman by the name of Nityama, Shantai Nityama. And seeing this guy, the first time, it was on a DVD. And this woman was laying naked on the table, which, as Golden said earlier, you don't have to be naked, but she was. And me and 2 of my buddies, shout out to Theo and Warren, they were there. And he just starts waving his hand over this woman. And for about 15, 20 minutes, it's kind of awkward because there's 4 of us in the room, 4 guys. And I'm like, man, what the hell are we watching, man? Because I had no point of reference. I'm working at Bank of America at the point, so I'm not on my spiritual journey to that level at this point. And I'm like, what? This is kind of awkward. I'm not down for watching porn with my boys. and this master, Qigong master and everything. That's not how I like to get down with it. And so, he was like, just chill and watch, man. And so the next thing you know, about 15, 20 minutes into it, though, old girl's face she started getting red, and she started squirming a little bit. I'm like, okay, got my attention. And then next thing you know, she just started boo-hoo crying. Deep, core crying. And then she started laughing. Okay. And then she started orgasming. She started orgasming. And so I was like, okay, explain what just happened to me. And meanwhile, the Nityama is not touching her at all.
Right.
And what happens, so this ties into what you were saying with your session. What's happening during those sessions is that the energy is being transmuted. Those feelings, like Kirti said, they're not bad. They're actually these negative feelings serve us to let us know you're not in alignment.
Yes.
When we feel bad, like Abraham Hicks and The Secret and all these things talk about, when we're feeling bad, it's just letting us know we're not in alignment. That's it.
Right.
That we're not in line with our Ori, as Aoife says, And so if we use that model to get us back on track, so when she was crying, and then what happens is the practitioner, in this case Nityama, helped her get back into alignment, and she started laughing, like, oh man. She started feeling herself more, started feeling who we are really at our core, and we're always that. That's who we really are. And then you go deeper into that, we are very sensual, sexual beings. That's who we are at our core. Sex brought us to the planet. So if we have a problem with that, as Nityama said in the first workshop that I saw him at, when we have a problem with our core energy, which is sex, because mom and daddy got together and they brought us to the planet through sex, if we have a problem with that core energy, we're going to have a problem with other aspects of our life, because that's the root.
That's deep.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I know a lot of people through my rebirthing training and experience that a lot of people carry in their lifetime or even from past lifetimes in utero trauma, conception trauma,
Mm-hmm.
because of whatever energies may have been at play. And so it might not even be our own conscious awareness that has blocks around sexual energy, but it could be connected to so much in this lifetime, past lifetimes, whether it was through our own experience or from the experience of our conception and our in utero experience or our birth, because birth is so sexual as well.
Exactly.
So there's that. And it was interesting because all of these layers for me were being revealed, and I was also being shown in the session how the traumas that I have experienced in this lifetime are actually, and the download I got was, they are, I want to say reenactments or reactivations of old wounds from other lifetimes.
Wow.
Because I was being shown myself in other lifetimes who I was sexually. And then I was shown how in this lifetime some of the intimate connections that I've had and some of the traumas that have come with that were actually playing out old traumas. And so it's interesting because it was showing me that trauma is actually, our human mind wouldn't say this, but my soul was saying it's a gift.
That's right, I remember that.
Yeah.
Right.
In that, like, this trauma is showing up for you to bring holy presence to it so that it can be transmuted.
Right.
And that's, I think, the beauty in what you are doing is bringing conscious presence to whatever is alive in that human and making it safe for it to come up and be held in the light of consciousness so that it can get unraveled, get unknotted and create a flow.
Well, more importantly, to not, for me, I think to liberate yourself. Sometimes we walk around with our trauma as if it's a name badge of who we are. And the truth is, it happened, it's done, it's the past. And it guides you and it moves you and you keep moving forward. And I think a lot of times we walk around like we cannot do something we choose that we want to do because of the past. And that's not the truth.
Well, but I think the caveat in that, what I've found is that our conscious mind can say, that's in the past.
Right.
That trauma happened to me before. But it's still, a trauma can be significant
Physical
enough that
too.
it distorts
Right.
our true sense so that we're not actually operating from our true sense. We're operating from a space of trauma. And so that takes people off the hook of it's easy to go into victim when you're operating from a space of trauma. And I just want to hold that compassionately because it actually is it's deep, deep work to go in and give presence to the trauma and give it enough spaciousness and light so that it can start to...
Well, I think that's where the physical stuff comes in. You can mentally, we can say, oh yeah, like what you're saying, I definitely hear what you're saying. But the truth is that sometimes we're also not connected, I think, to the physical enough to where, we might say, get it together, moving forward. That's definitely not what I hope that's not what is coming off. What I'm trying to say is that in order to move forward, there's the work that has to get done.
Yes.
And that work is what I think you're touching on. And also being there and present for your session, I have to openly admit that, I was getting work done. Being with you. You doing the work was helping me as a woman get my work done. Yeah.
Can you expound upon that for us?
Well, there were moments where places that you were going, and my eyes were closed, and really I just try to be a conduit, right? It's as a dancer, you're a conduit, but you're managing space, time, energy, flow, music, rhythm.
Conductor.
Right. In this setting, it's really different because I can just, like, I don't have to think, is the audience engaged? Is, am I tuning in? Like everybody else, what they're bringing in to a show. Here, it's a whole different setup. So as I was doing that and closing my eyes, there were things I was feeling, and then when I would open my eyes and see you, I felt like we were exactly in the same place. Like.
You hit mine too, a little powerful.
Yeah.
You felt like when you. No, you did. When I felt happy and I was smiling. When I opened my eyes, I saw you were smiling, and I didn't know that.
Yeah.
When you were feeling some certain way, most of the time my eyes are closed because that for me is easier for me to like tune in. But if I was to open my eyes just to see what was around, I noticed, things were really perfect and everything was like, it was like, wow, okay, when you just tune in, things are actually the way they're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, your work was actually my work too.
Makes sense.
So yeah, thank you for that too.
Well, that's the place where, with the feminine, like, it kind of starts this chain. Like, if one woman falls in, like what you were holding the energy for to fall into a receptive mode, or if Golden had to start, it starts a thing where all of you do. So working on one woman actually is helping many different women. When I saw this for the first time and really got that to a deep level, I was like, man, we could really change things on this planet pretty quickly if you were to have 100 people feel what you were feeling at one time. If you did that in Chicago on the South Side, that might change the crime rate. Like that's how powerful we are as beings. And that's, like you said, that's nothing but breath and presence.
Side note, at school we did the walkout, and
For gun awareness.
right, yeah, and it was so interesting because I was like, whoa, it totally actually made me think of like what we do, because we had all these students, in silence and just doing in one purpose, and I was like, oh wow, this is like so similar to what we did in, the apartment, maybe just the three of us. But like, wow, once you expand that, they have these days where everybody meditates together and is, I have to say, I do really believe that, and I've experienced that where it shifts.
Right.
And, just from doing this, work with you, I feel like me as a professional, I'm walking that. And it doesn't have to just be confined to the apartment.
I love that.
You walk it. You start to begin to walk that, and it's like, wow,
it's who you are.
It's okay. Like, and people feed off that. And I've heard parents just be like, wow, like something's changed. Like it just feels different. Or, I mean, I am a hugger at my job, but I notice, more and more, it's like adults will be open to hug me, or, and I think that's a beautiful thing. Like to just break down that barrier of like, oh, we're in work mode. Everybody's like clocking in.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we're all human.
Yes.
We're all human. We're bringing our stuff to work. We deal with our stuff at work. We go home. And, we're actually ultimately in a school setting. I mean, you're a role model for the kiddos to also honor that. So I do think that the more of this work that you do, it carries into all facets of life.
For sure.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So you were saying that you talked about two of your masters.
So, and then there's a third.
Yeah, and then we segued, so.
No, and we can't forget her because that was the feminine. She's actually the one who brought me to IFA. She knows. So shout out to Sasha Cobra. She's the third master, and she actually gave me an actual physical experience of the energy work. So had a session with her 2013, 1 year before I started doing it professionally myself. And with Yao and Nitiyama, to the best of their ability, God bless them, they were trying to get me to get out my left brain and realize, like, I would ask them, like, well, how do you do it? I was stuck on how do you do it, and it's not how do you do it, it's who you are. It's a state of being, and it's also knowing who the other person is. That we are love beings, at our core. Yeah. And I'll be like, well, how do you do it?
What's the formula?
Right.
Totally.
I was stuck there for years, and Seriously. And then with my session with Sasha, she said, when you get up on that table, on that massage table, you're going to see how powerful you are and how it's you, that anything that's moving in your life or not moving, it's you. I was like, okay, whatever. You know, like, you know, I was trying to be disrespectful. I was like, okay. I got up on the table, and she was sitting some ways away from me, and without even touching me, had all this electricity. I mean, my body was like a fish out of water. I couldn't control it. And all of these scenes from my childhood were just flowing through my mind, like with your session. I was like, oh shit, that's where I formed this idea about money. This it's stuff that I don't even remember now. It was just very present in that moment. Like, it was just so much download. Like, it's, you know, but it helped in that moment, and it actually still gives you awareness and consciousness that helps transmit to other parts of your life. You know, even though you may not consciously be able to assimilate all of it in a conscious way, your subconscious is making connections and letting go. So that's where I had the third master, the actual physical experience. And from there, I started to really see some real progress with my energy work. So, yeah.
Wow, interesting. So, for me, the little takeaway bit of that is there wasn't a specific formula for you to follow in being a facilitator. It's more like you had the experience of embodying your truth, and that activated you and awakened your ability to hold space for other people.
Exactly. After, actually, I'll be remiss to not mention kind of like a fourth master, because even though he had already transitioned, he actually physically taught Nityama, and that's Osho.
Okay.
So Nityama is in the lineage of Osho, and Osho, I actually was introduced to him, interestingly enough, in about 1999 or 2000. I had brought this, I used to buy these, it was this company called Nightingale Conant, and they sell all these like self-help. So I would spend like $60, $80 and buy these self-help, because I'm dating myself, cassette tapes. Shout out to mixtapes, and, you know, yeah, so I would get a hot mixtape of self-improvement from Nightingale Conant, and
on your Ghetto Blaster?
Yeah, you know, Tony Robbins and shit, you know.
But did your radio automatically flip the tape for you?
That's
the next level.
That's technology.
That's technology. You know? So yeah, but on that tape, it was like, and I didn't know who the dude was, but I know now, I found out later that was Osho, because he had his famous fuck talk, where he just kept saying the word fuck to mess with people.
Yeah.
He used to like to mess with people a lot. And so that was my introduction to Osho and everything. So he was the actual fourth master too, that actually has affected me quite a bit. Just reading his books. He actually never wrote a book, but they've transcribed so much of his stuff. So, but I brought him up. Sometime I do that. I brought him up because he said that it's a pathless path. You know, that this walk, this tantric walk, this Taoist walk, is a pathless path. There's no way to do it.
Because you're already doing it.
We are, especially.
It's like there's nothing to strive for, because you're actually, it's like reeling it back in to the remembrance of like, I'm already fucking it.
Exactly.
The formula is there's no formula.
Especially for the feminine, because the feminine energy, you know, however you express yourself gender-wise or whatever, but if you're in your feminine energy, then you're already kind of naturally tantric.
Can you talk a bit about that?
Because you're a more sensual being, you know, and you're more in contact with your emotions and the exchange of these two energies. Whereas with the masculine energy, the mental realm, kind of is the gatekeeper to those things, and it says what is possible and what is not possible. It's the binary code of things. You know, nothing wrong with that energy, but you don't want it in your bedroom.
Right.
You don't want to bring your head into the bedroom. You know, but never mind.
Well, not everyone, right? Men might want to.
Yeah. I take that back, but
just one.
Right.
Just bring one.
But yeah. You know, so the mental realm can act as a gatekeeper to, you know, conditioning love and conditioning pleasure. That's what the mental realm will do. It will put these gauges and these locks on how much pleasure is available, how much love, and that's
where and what you can't access, and why and when. And
right, and a lot of times it's based on our past. You know, because the mind, time is of the mind, but the moment is of the body.
Right.
The moment is of the body.
So I have a question that's coming up that perhaps people who are watching I'm thinking people might be having this question.
Sure.
If a woman knows that she is carrying sexual trauma or abuse or something really significant that is debilitating to her, and she feels called to do this kind of work, but she has a lot of fear about making space for it to come up. Have you worked with women like that? And what does that look like for women? I mean, I think probably most of us have, unfortunately, sexual trauma. And, like, what does that look like in the work? How do you hold that space when that's coming through?
And I won't say unfortunate, but it tends to be that's actually a big portion of the clients that come to me have had something going on. I do see people come that just want to break through with their purpose.
Okay.
They just want to, I'm stuck in this rut with my job.
Yeah.
I want to have a breakthrough. And when we change, again, that gatekeeper, what it says is possible, then we realize, like, oh shit, I have options. But we'd be surprised how we keep getting stuck in the same neurons firing.
Yeah.
So this energy work will help you have a breakthrough, help you have purpose. So that's one. And then people sometimes just come who want, some more sensuality in their life. Maybe, they just want to express themselves as a more sensual being or explore that. So sometimes it may be somebody who's like very sexual already. But it's like, oh, I heard you can maybe help me have orgasm without somebody touching me. I'd love to have that. But then a big portion of the people actually have had trauma. And so it looks similar to your session. It's just really being very empathetic and being very, and I feel like that's where the feminine, having Kirti or my mom or somebody else, a woman with me now, especially if someone just is honest with me and let me know that they've had trauma, definitely in those instances I should have another woman there because it helps them just go deeper into it. So when I told my mom what I was doing, the session with you and the one other woman that we did, Sydney, she was like, "That's it, Sho. That's it. You need, especially when women and she said the same. She's like, when women have had something go on, they need another woman there."
Definitely.
She was like, "I'll help you."
Nice.
Oh yeah. So my mom is going to be on some of the sessions with me, which is cool.
So do you do this work on people in male bodies as well?
Yes.
Okay.
You can do it with the male body with if I was to start. I haven't done it yet, but if I were to do it, I know how to do it. Definitely need the feminine there too, especially if I started doing a lot of them, because you want to have Yao talks about it in his book actually. You want to have someone there of the opposite sex just to convert the energy. We will burn ourselves out if we're just constantly doing, where it's yin to yin or yang to yang. It's kind of like energy needs a source and a ground in order for it to flow.
It's like electricity.
That's what chi, chi is really, that's what the Kundalini is. So that's the science of it. So I could do, one-on-one with a masculine or male energy, but I wouldn't want to do that all the time because I might burn myself out. Definitely want to convert it over.
Right. And you do this with couples as well?
Exactly.
How does that look or work?
So my goal, one of the things that comes up that with the couples that I've worked with is that I'm really looking to teach them how to do it on each other. So it's more like we may actually work on one partner, but then at some point we all actually want to get into how to actually do this with each other. And actually, to be honest with you, I really want to start doing that more because that's when I feel like when we have partnership, that's when you can move tantrically quicker. We can do it by ourselves. Because we can do it by ourselves, no doubt. We can, because we have male and female energies in us. Everything that we think of, if we have, and that's the thing, if we have a hang up on the other energy, some women, there's a lot of misandry right now, which is the hate of men, because of all of the patriarchal bullshit that men have done, and the masculine energy has represented on this planet, but we don't want to fall into the other energy, fuck men, because in you have that masculine energy, the heart beats and it retracts. That's masculine and feminine energy. The lungs, what they're doing, yin and yang all day. So if we fall in opposition or hatred towards one of those energies, then we're going to be throwing ourselves off. So what was the question again?
The couples talk about
about how couples can apply this and do this together. And are you talking about in doing healing sessions, sexual intimacy, conversation? Like, how do you facilitate that?
Yeah, so what I really, my goal in the session is just to really have the person fall into a place of empathy for their mate, and then also connection with themselves first, and knowing who they are. So that's a big portion of it, is just to really get us in tune, in alignment with ourselves during the session, and then figure out how to connect with their mate, And it sounds simple, but it can be kind of challenging, even though we may have been married to the person for whatever many years or whatever. You'd be surprised how disconnected we can be in that way because of all the other things that we're given to deal with as human beings right now. So that's what the session looks like for a couple is, and again, if one of the members of the couple actually have some trauma or something, we may focus more, the first session or so or two, on just doing energy work on that partner, and then we'll start getting into the exchange, and I'm kind of like just there to help them do that, so they can start doing it without me.
Yeah, I think that's the goal. I mean, it's not like, you go for acupuncture every week, or,
No.
You go to get your checkup. I think really the goal is that to realize you have the power within you to access at any time, at any moment, and that you don't need Shophar to fix yourself. Whatever that means.
That's a good point that you bring up, Kirti, because I like a good acupuncturist or a good energy worker, you want to work yourself out of a job.
Yeah.
I don't mind if you refer some people, but if I'm still seeing you years later, then you need to go see another energy worker, because like Kirti just said, there should come a place where that I can just lay on this bed, and because once you've experienced it, like everything you experienced during that session is available to you. It's in your memory now, So if we can go deep enough in ourselves, we can have that experience again by ourselves,
Oh, you got heart explosion on that one, Shophar.
Oh, cool. And my phone, my people's is going now.
Yeah. I'm going to see if anyone asked any questions.
I saw a big, long splurge of earlier.
Of words?
Yeah, like it was like somebody had written a paragraph. I don't know if they were just...
Splurge words.
Splurge words.
I don't know if they were just like...
Oh, okay. Earthly Soul Lily said, you said sexual energy is at the root of all other energies. Can you explain that a bit more?
Sure. So as we manifest here in the physical body, the exchange of, and what I mean by sex is sensual energy, which is our physical, our eyes, ears, nose, taste, our senses. So that's sensual is senses, that which makes us be in the physical body, our organs and all of that. So you got that energy, and then you have the emotions, the joy, the happiness, the fears, these different things. Love, that's the biggest. That's the emotional. And when we have an exchange of those two energies, that's sex. So that's how I define it. So without those two energies really being explained, we can rub our bodies together, and that might feel pleasurable, but for me, that's not really sex. When I started to have breakthroughs with this work is when I started to really understand the play of those two things and how to exchange those two things. And again, like I say, if I say I love someone, it needs to register in the physical body.
Yeah. So you're saying, what I'm hearing is, tell me if I'm right or wrong if I got this.
Sure.
Sexual connection in its true form of intimacy is the sensory body.
Right.
And emotional presence.
Exactly.
And my experience is then that has been in my own, intimacy with myself or other people, is that it's almost like when the more presence that we can bring from those aspects of our being, it's like this portal is created and we can actually travel into realms, dimensions together, and it's almost like it's the portal into pure source.
Exactly. Makes sense. Because what happens is that when we do that, we get into like a trance-like state, and anytime we get into a trance-like state, the mind isn't saying what is real, what isn't, what is possible, what it's taking a little hike,
yes,
and then everything is possible.
Mm-hmm.
It's altered states of consciousness.
It's altered states of consciousness.
Yeah.
And in this realm, once you get the mind out the way, I can be like, okay, she's gonna feel orgasmic even though I'm not touching her, and the energy will be like, your wish is my command. You know.
Talk about that for a
Yeah.
second. That's really intriguing. I want to continue.
So I remember at a workshop with Nityama, he was like, man, we have all these Orisha, we have all these, the Devis, or, these angels and demons at our disposal that are waiting for us to tell it what to do. And most of us don't know how to make contact with these intelligences, these forces of nature, because the mind is saying that it's not possible.
Totally.
So once the mind is out the way, this is, I think, how hypnosis works, but this is not a hypnosis session when you get these things, get the session with me. But once you get that out the way, then it's really like, and that was another turning point for me with the sessions, is like to really be like, okay, I can get my mind out the way, and once that person is in a different state, and I can say to the energy, by Skype, that this person's going to have an orgasmic experience by Skype, and they will.
That's incredible. That is seriously incredible.
That's how incredible we are.
Yeah.
That's how incredible we are.
Well, I mean, just think of it. I wouldn't think that if we can collectively gather as a global community and affect change just with presence, why couldn't this happen through Skype? People meditate all on one day, and you see a shift. Then why not?
I agree.
I
agree. So a funny story. When I first heard one of the masters say that you could do it by Skype, I was just trying to wrap my mind around like the across the room thing. But, the whole distance thing. So I didn't really believe it until one of my 4 sisters, I won't say which one, but she had a session, and she was like, it was the most Skype session. She was in Virginia, where we're from, 804, baby. 804. Yeah, 2 up, 2 down, Virginia. And she was like, it was the most, and he was in California, she was in Virginia. She said it was the most powerful thing she ever felt. I was like, I had a lot of rearranging to get to the place that I'm at now, because that really fucked with me. It's like, how? But time and space is just another mental illusion.
Which, I mean, brings into this whole idea of like what people think is not possible and what is possible. I mean, I know I've been with family members in the hospital and people are praying all around.
Mm.
Yeah.
Definitely. Let's see. Let's check in here. Rhino Surfer said, "Sex is our root." He asked that as a question, but I'm not quite sure.
Maybe you should talk about the emotional exchange.
Go deeper into that. I can do that.
That was the way.
Okay, so there's that, and then maybe this is the thing that you saw. Let It Be Cozy said, "This is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing the space with us. I don't have a question. I'm open to receive what you have to share. Feeling old pain coming to the surface."
Oh, yeah.
So, okay, so Rhino Surfer was saying sex is at the root?
Yes. So it was like with the other question is,
Oops.
Okay.
So I think one of the biggest things, so in the Egyptian tree of life, they call the Orisha, or the forces of nature, the forces that are in us, these emotionalities, these things that prompt us to do the things, these intelligence that prompt us to do what we do in life. They call it the Neters, or the Medu Netir. That's where we get the word Mother Nature from. But there's this one aspect of ourselves called Mayat, and it understands the interdependence of life. So this exchange of yin and yang energies. When in Chinese medicine, when yin and yang stop messing with each other, when they stop, really dealing with each other and interacting, that's death. When yin separates from yang, then we have what we transition in this life, and we no longer have life. So we want to, we can master the exchange of these energies in our bodies. And that's what this energy work is, and Qigong and yoga. These are all sciences, these are all technologies to help us to learn how to exchange these things.
I think oftentimes, especially Western mentality, is very much like sex is 2 bodies and equals orgasm. like that's sex. And sometimes
Or not.
for
a lot
yeah,
of
so I was
people.
just gonna say, for a lot of people, it does not equal
Yeah.
that.
Right.
But that's a very Western approach to something that's kind of been studied for centuries, and I don't think it's that at all. I mean, I know just like Kama Sutra and other stuff, other studies around the world. It's so much more emotional,
Right.
and doesn't always equal that. Doesn't always equal that. Doesn't always. I mean, so much of what they were doing for courtesans, or even it's understanding your own power first, of like what you can do for yourself, and then sharing that with others, but like really mastering that for yourself. And I wonder, a lot of times I think it's hard for people, and also growing up in this country, right? Like what you're exposed to on TV, and like what you're seeing in magazines, and kind of how you're schooled to meet your first love and your first kiss, and like all of that. I think that like that all kind of needs to shift a little bit to help kids and help people see that like it's everything you do is actually a sensual emotional exchange.
Exactly.
Everything you do is sex, but we just define it as this like physical act, and it's kind of dirty,
Yeah.
Right,
and it's
right.
secretive,
Distorted, yeah.
and it's like hide that, and so then it can create for this space of shame and guilt. And I think that for the young woman who said that painful memories, or I think that that's what we have to, like, as women, kind of be willing to accept, that like, okay, I'm feeling shameful about that, or I'm feeling guilty about that, but why? Like, why? Because the truth is, if somebody took advantage of you, that's not your fault necessarily. Like, and if you could understand that there was an emotional exchange that happened, and then again, that discomfort is exposing a gap in your alignment of you as a person, it's an occurrence. It's how something occurred for you, and you can easily shift that trauma, shame, and guilt to mean something that's like, it's an opening.
Yeah.
And like, if you can see that as an opening, then maybe you can walk with being open for other people. Be a clearing. Change the opening to being a clearing.
Yes.
So I think that everything is, like, I'm starting to understand that. It's like fresh knowledge for me too. That like, I think everything is sex. I think we just limit it to like being naked and being in bed, but it's like, no, it's like me driving to work in my car. This is an emotional exchange with a piece of metal on the road, with dealing with all these other people on the road and their stuff, and road rage, or like if being mindful how you're driving when you first come in, and do you say good morning to everybody? Like, that's your sensual emotional exchange. Who says good morning back to you? Do you take that in as like, oh, this is going to mess up my day? That's like just an emotional exchange, and just letting it flow in and out. And I think being tuned into that what's good about this work is that it helps you tune into who you are authentically, so that you can really offer an emotional exchange.
There you go.
Like, if you don't tap into what you have, how are you going to offer it to somebody? If you don't know how much money you have in your bank account, how are you going to loan anybody any money?
Right.
If you don't know the capacity of your own love, how are you going to be able to heal or serve?
You both hit on two really good words. I love, like awareness, and then you were talking about connection. And, without connection, the awareness is the connection. And when we are aware in our drive to work, we are aware of our body and the state of our body. Am I tense right now around the shoulders? And how am I feeling? When you get in contact with that central, my shoulders, and the emotions, that is, like you just said, that is sex. And we have to also understand, like, to both of their questions, sex to our core. I remember in Yao's book, he talks about how we are sexual beings to the point that our cells are always multiplying. That's sexual. Right now, there's sex going on in your body,
Yeah.
Like, if that stops, then again, like, if yin and yang stops doing so, if our cells was to stop, replicating, that would be death. We're sexual to the core. There's no way to get around it. So if we have guilt, we have shame, how can we look at these, frame it different, and look at things differently?
Oh my goodness, it's saying 30 seconds remaining.
Oh, wow. Dang.
Is there anything that you two want to...
I think you should talk about your book and your
Oh
workshop.
my god!
Oh, workshop. Okay, excuse me, y'all.
Shophar has a book and a workshop coming.
All right, this is the book. It'll be out like this next week.
Yay!
Yeah.
Where can we buy it?
It's gonna be on Amazon and Lulu.com.
Okay, and then your work.
The workshop. We have a workshop in LA next Sunday and one April 7th.
Oh, you missed the April 7th.
Dang. Thank you for catching that 30 seconds. Wow.
Peace.
Peace, y'all.
Love you.
Very cool.